No one ever really looked behind the old saloon in Dry River. It was the kind of place men stumbled out of after midnight, too drunk to notice the creaking barn door swaying in the desert wind. Most folks figured the building was just for wagons, maybe a few sacks of moldy grain. But one night, under the dull glow of a half-dead lantern, Levi Tucker noticed something else. Levi wasn't the type to go poking into other people's business. He was a quiet man, lived alone out near the ridge where the snow clung to the pines like old ghosts. He'd come into town for nails and feed, and maybe to sit in silence at a corner table, nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. He didn't drink, not anymore, not since the war, not since she left, not since too many things. But that night, something pulled him off his path. He heard it at first. He thought it was a stray dogger, soft rustling, a chain dragging, maybe a low whimper. But it wasn't a dog, it was a boy, curled up on a bed of straw, thin as a fence rail, with a canvas sack over his head and hands shackled to a post. Levi stood there for a long while, the cold biting into his coat, the stench of rot and whiskey hanging in the air. "Boy," he said gently, voice low like he didn't want to scare him. "You hurt?" No answer, just trembling. The kind that didn't come from cold, but from something deeper, fear, shame, hunger. Levi stepped closer, boots crunching softly on the dirt. He reached out, careful, and lifted the sack just enough to see a face. Lord, that face! The boy couldn't have been more than 10. Black hair matted with sweat and grime, eyes wide and wild like a cornered coyote. A fresh bruise bloomed purple across his cheek, and his lips were cracked, blood dried at the corners. "Who did this to you?" Levi asked, but again the boy said nothing. Then a voice behind him slurred, "Mean, soaked in liquor. That one's mine." Levi turned slow. A thick-set man stood in the doorway, coat half-buttoned, pistol slung carelessly at his hip. "He yours?" Levi asked flatly. "Bought him off a trader down in El Paso. Ain't your concern." Levi didn't say anything, just stared. The man chuckled. "Hell, if you want him so bad, give me $1, one shiny dollar, and he's yours." There was a long silence. The only sound was the wind slipping through the cracks in the walls and the rattling of that chain. Levi reached into his coat, pulled out a single silver dollar, held it between two fingers. "That boy ever speak?" he asked. "Not once," the man said. "Dumb as a rock." Levi didn't blink. He stepped forward, placed the coin on a barrel, and then he turned back to the boy. He knelt down, slowly, meeting those frightened eyes. "You come with me now," Levi said softly. "No more chains, no more darkness, just snow and firewood and quiet." The boy didn't move, not yet, but his eyes tracked Levi's every motion, and when Levi took a bolt cutter from his saddlebag, because of course he had one, a ranchman always did, and clipped the rusted chain, the boy didn't. "Run, Dot." He stood, shaking, weak, but upright. Dot. He followed Levi out into the moonlight. No one stopped them, not even the man who had sold a child for $1 that night. Levi didn't ride back to his cabin. He walked, held the reins in one hand and the boy's small shoulder in the other. The trail was long and cold, but they didn't speak a word, and somehow that silence felt more sacred than any prayer Levi had ever heard inside a church, because sometimes the first step toward healing is just being free. What do you think happened before that night in the barn? Would you have done the same in Levi's boots? Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. The wind had already picked up by the time Levi and the boy reached the ridge. Snow was falling slow and steady, like someone up high was shaking out a bag of flour. The trail to Levi's cabin twisted through pines heavy with frost, their needles whispering secrets to each other that no man could understand. The boy didn't say a word the whole way, didn't ask where they were going, didn't look around, didn't stumble, just followed. He moved quiet, like he was used to not being noticed, used to taking up as little space in the world as possible. Levi glanced back every now and then to make sure he was still there, and every time, the boy's eyes met his, not questioning, not trusting either, just waiting. Levi's cabin wasn't much, but it was warm. He kept it clean, not for guests he hadn't had any in years, but because some part of him believed a man should always have at least one thing in his life he could keep steady. The front door leaned on one hinge, creaked when he opened it. "I keep meaning to fix that," he muttered, more to himself than to the boy. Inside, the hearth still held a few glowing embers. Levi knelt, stoked it back to life, fed it dry logs from the stack beside it. Heat slowly chased the cold from the corners. He didn't rush, he just worked in that same quiet rhythm that had kept him alive all these years. The boy stood near the door, arms folded tight across his chest, like he didn't know whether he was allowed to step further. "You can sit," Levi said gently. "Ain't nobody gonna holler at you here." The boy didn't move. Levi took 2 tin cups, filled them both with boiled water and honey, what little sweetness he had. He set one on the table near the hearth. "Not much, but it'll warm you." He sat in the chair opposite, let the boy decide. It took a long time, but finally, like an animal sniffing its way into a new den, the boy crept forward, sat on the edge of the stool, and held the cup in both hands like it might disappear. Levi studied him under the firelight. That face was more than just bruises. It was hollow in places where childhood should have still lived. The kind of look Levi had seen on soldiers too young for war. And maybe in some cruel way, that's what this boy had survived a war no one saw, chained in the shadows of a town, too busy drinking to care. "I'm Levi," he said. Silence. "You got a name?" The boy blinked, swallowed hard. Wren came out rough, like the word had been caged for a long time. Levi nodded slowly. "That's a good name, like the bird." The boy glanced up just for a second. "You hungry, Wren?" A nod. Levi cooked what he had, some potatoes, jerky boiled soft, and the last of his cornbread. They ate by the fire in quiet. Every few minutes, Wren would glance around, shoulders tight, eyes darting toward the door, like he still expected someone to burst through and drag him back. But no one came, and when the meal was done and the fire burned low, Levi laid a wool blanket on the cot near the stove, not saying much, just enough. "You sleep here, it's warm. I'll take the chair." Wren looked at him, like that didn't make sense, like he'd never been offered something without a price before. Levi shrugged. "That's just how it is out here. You'll learn." The boy lay down slowly, curled on his side, eyes open a long time even after Levi closed his. And just before sleep came for Levi like a long-lost friend, he heard it, a whisper, soft, barely audible. "Thank you." And Levi didn't answer, didn't stir. But in the stillness of that night, something inside him, a place long frozen, shifted just slightly. Not melted. Not yet, but maybe. Thawing. When morning came, the storm had quieted, leaving a thin blanket of snow across the land, white and still, like the world had been made new overnight. Levi rose early, as he always did, but that morning he moved slower, not because of age or the cold, but because he didn't want to wake the boy. There was something sacred about watching a child sleep, especially one who hadn't had peace in a long time. Wren was curled tight under the wool blanket. A little color returned to his cheeks, his lips no longer cracked and dry. His hands, though those told the real story. Even in sleep, his fists were clenched, as if his body hadn't yet gotten the message that the chains were gone. Levi set water to boil, poured a little coffee in his tin mug, and stepped outside. The world was quiet. Smoke drifted slow from the chimney, and the pines stood still in the hush that always followed a snowstorm. It was the kind of morning Levi used to love before life got so loud inside his own head. He heard the door creak behind him. Wren stood barefoot on the threshold, the blanket wrapped around his shoulders like a shield. "You'll catch cold," Levi said, without turning. The boy didn't answer, but he stepped out anyway into the snow, slow and cautious, like he didn't quite believe he was allowed. Levi pointed toward the pines. "That's the northern ridge. Gets real pretty come spring. Birds nest up there, elk sometimes, if you're quiet enough." Wren said nothing, but his eyes followed Levi's hand. The boy stood there for a long moment, letting the snow touch his feet, his breath clouding in the cold. And then, slowly, almost like he didn't mean to, he asked, "You gonna keep me?" Levi turned, surprised not by the question itself, but by the way Wren asked it. No desperation, no begging, just uncertainty, like someone asking if winter was going to end this year, or if the sun still rose in the east. "I'm not keeping you like a horse or a gun," Levi said softly. "But you're safe here, as long as you want to be." Wren looked away. He said nobody wanted me, said I was broken. Levi crouched down beside him, the snow crunching under his knees. He didn't try to correct the boy or offer sweet words too big for the moment. Instead, he picked up a rock from the snow and placed it in Wren's palm. "See that? Cracked down the middle. Ugly little thing. but toss it in the stove, and it'll hold heat longer than wood ever could. Point is, broken don't mean useless. Sometimes it just means tested. Wren held the rock close. Didn't speak, but he didn't drop it either. Later that morning, Levi took him to the barn. He expected the boy to flinch, maybe freeze up, but Wren followed, hesitant, but curious. "This one's Buck," Levi said, patting his old roan. "He don't much care for strangers, but he's got a soft spot for quiet folk." Buck snorted and backed up a step when Wren reached out, but Levi guided the boy's hand, slow and steady. "That's it. Let him smell you first." Wren did as he was told, and after a moment, Buck leaned forward, snuffling the boy's wrist. Wren smiled, a tiny lopsided thing that vanished almost as fast as it came, but Levi saw it, and for the first time since he'd found the boy, he let himself hope. Maybe the kid didn't need fixing. Maybe he just needed time, and a place where no one would chain him again. The days that followed passed slow and quiet, like snow melting off a roof, soft, steady, almost unnoticeable, unless you were paying real close attention. Levi didn't ask questions, not because he didn't want to know, but because he figured some stories only come out when the soul is ready. Wren spoke. Little he moved carefully around the cabin, like each creaking board might turn on him, but he watched everything: how Levi sharpened his knife, how he folded blankets, how he fed the horses in the exact same order every morning, and at night, when the wind howled through the pines, Wren would lie on the cot, eyes wide open, fingers curled in the blanket like it might be ripped away at any moment. One night, Levi brought out an old book from the shelf, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. The pages were worn thin, corners bent from too many readings. He didn't say anything, just sat down in the wooden rocker by the fire and started reading out loud, slow and even. Wren didn't move at first, but by the second page, he turned on his side. By the fourth, his breathing had slowed. By the time Levi reached chapter 2, the boy had drifted off, lips parted slightly, arms loose at his sides. The next night, Wren brought the book over and handed it to Levi without saying a word, and just like that, it became a ritual, one chapter a night, no matter what. One morning, while splitting firewood, Levi noticed Wren crouched by the barn fence, staring hard at something. He walked over, wiping his hands on his pants. "What is it?" Wren pointed. A rabbit lay near the edge of the brush, barely breathing, its hind leg twisted at an angle that didn't look right, likely caught in a trap some fool had left behind. Levi knelt beside it, inspecting the wound. "She won't make it on her own." Wren said nothing. "You want me to end it quick?" A small shake of the head. "Can we try to help her?" Wren asked, barely above a whisper. Levi looked at the boy, then back at the rabbit, and finally nodded. "Reckon we can." Back at the cabin, Levi splintered the rabbit's leg, using a matchstick and linen. Wren held her gently, whispering something Levi couldn't quite hear. They built a little box by the stove and laid her there with bits of lettuce and a shallow pan of water. That night, after Levi read another chapter, Wren asked something unexpected. "Do you got any kids?" Levi stared at the fire for a long time before answering. "I had a daughter, long time ago." "What happened?" Levi rubbed his thumb along the spine of the book. "She and her mama didn't make it through a hard winter. Wagon tipped crossing, and iced over creek I was behind. Couldn't get there in time." Silence. "I used to think," Levi continued, "that maybe I wasn't meant to be a father. That maybe some men are just built for silence and dust and fences that always break when you need them most." Wren's voice was quiet. "You read real good." Levi smiled faintly. "Thank you, Wren." Another pause. "Do you think I was meant to be anything?" The question landed like a stone in Levi's chest. He looked at the boy, really looked on, saw how much of him was still locked away behind those tired, watchful eyes. "I think," Levi said slowly, "you were meant to be free. Whatever comes after that, that's yours to choose." For the first time, Wren didn't look away. He just nodded, once, and Levi knew that was more than words could ever give. 3 weeks had passed since Levi cut the boy's chain. Snow came and went, melting into the thirsty ground, then frosting. Again, under nightfall, the forest had settled into a quiet rhythm, the kind of silence you only hear when you've lived in it long enough to recognize its music. Wren had changed, little by little. He spoke more, just a few words at a time, but with a softness that made each one matter. He'd started helping around the cabin too, gathering kindling, brushing the horses, even setting 2 places at the table witout being asked. He still flinched sometimes when a log popped too loud in the fire, or when Levi moved too quickly near the door butt. Healing was like thawing earth. It took time, and sometimes it cracked before it bloomed. One morning, Levi was out near the ridge chopping dead pine for firewood. Wren stayed back to feed the rabbit, now healthy enough to hop circles around the cot and sweep the porch. That's when he saw it. Tracks, not animal ones. Boot prints, heavy, dragging a little on the left. Too big to be Levi's. They came from the edge of the trees, looped around the side of the cabin, then back into the woods. Wren stood frozen, broom in hand, heart hammering against his ribs like it wanted out. He didn't yell, didn't panic. He just walked inside, found Levi's rifle leaning by the door, and sat down beside it, waiting by the time Levi returned. The sun was high and the air sharp with the scent of pine and cold iron. "You all right, Wren?" Levi asked, noticing the stiff posture. Wren nodded once, then looked toward the tree line. There was someone. Levi's boots stopped mid-step. "What do you mean?" Big Boots dragged one foot, came around the back. Levi didn't speak for a long moment. Then he set down the firewood, picked up the rifle, and walked the perimeter. His eyes scanned the snow, followed the trail to the trees. He crouched low, touched the print, too fresh to be old, too sure to be random. When he came back inside, Wren was still sitting by the door, fists clenched. "You think it's him?" Levi asked softly. Wren didn't answer right away. "Then, he used to drag his leg, said it was from an old bullet, but he lied about a lot of things." Levi nodded slowly. "All right." He didn't say more, just poured 2 cups of hot water, added honey, and handed one to Wren. "Cabin's sturdy," he said. "Doors thick. We've got time, if it comes to that." Wren looked up. "Aren't you scared?" Levi blew across his cup. "I've seen enough fear to last me a lifetime. These days I just focus on what I can keep warm and breathing." They didn't sleep much that night. The wind picked up again, brushing against the windows like fingers testing the glass. Levi sat by the fire with the rifle across his lap. Wren lay on the cot, but his eyes stayed open, locked on the door. Around midnight, the rabbit stirred and thumped its foot against the box. Levi didn't move, but Wren whispered, "He won't take me back. Even if he comes, I won't go." And for the first time, Levi didn't see a scared boy. He saw someone learning the shape of his own will, someone choosing, and that, Levi thought, might just be the beginning of becoming something no one could. Chain again. What would you do if danger came knocking in the night? And do you think Wren is ready to face the man who broke him? Leave your thoughts below. Keep watching. The truth walks in wearing boots. The knock came just after sunrise. Not loud, just 2 short taps, like someone testing the wood for softness. Levi looked up from the stove. Wren was still half asleep in the cot, eyes fluttering open at the sound. Outside, the world was quiet. Snow had fallen again, fresh and undisturbed, except for 1 set of boot tracks that led straight to the porch. Levi set down the kettle, walked to the door, didn't reach for the rifle just yet. He opened it slowly. A man stood there, tall and sun-worn, his coat heavy with trail dust. 1 boot scuffed the porch plank as he shifted weight off a stiff leg. He wore a crooked smile, like it had once been charming, now dulled by time and rot. "Morning," the man drawled. Levi didn't answer. The man tipped his hat. "Name's Murdoch. Heard there was a boy up this way. Small, black hair, don't talk much. Might have wandered off from town. You seen anyone like that?" Wren was standing behind Levi now, silent as breath. Levi didn't turn. He kept his voice even. "I seen a lot of boys, Mr. Most don't come with chains on their ankles." That smile faded just slightly. "Well now," Murdoch said, shifting his stance, "sometimes boys need discipline. World don't hand out kindness for free. Someone's got to raise 'em right." Levi's jaw worked. "You raising him with a whip and a collar?" Murdoch's eyes narrowed, but he chuckled, like a man used to talking his way around guilt. "I paid good money for him. He's mine, and I ain't here to fight. Just want to take back what's mine and be on my way." Levi stepped forward, just enough that the doorframe no longer stood between them. "He's not yours." Murdoch's smile vanished. "You got no right. I paid $1. Levi cut in, calm as frost. "Same as you did." The silence that followed was thick. Inside the cabin, Wren took a step forward, his voice barely a whisper. He used to lock me in the root cellar. Murdoch flinched at the sound. Levi turned just slightly. You want to speak to the boy? Speak to him direct. But he ain't going anywhere he don't choose. Murdoch looked at Wren, his voice low now, slick, oily. Boy, you know how cold it gets out here. You think this old man gonna keep you safe when real hunger comes? You know where your place is. You've been told. Wren didn't answer. He stepped behind Levi, and then softly, steadily placed his hand on Levi's coat. Just held it, not pulling, just claiming something. Levi didn't move, but something in his voice shifted, less calm now. A quiet kind of anger. You step off my land, he said, and you don't come back. Murdoch's mouth twisted, eyes flicking to the rifle by the wall, to the boy's thin frame, to the snow beginning to fall again. You'll regret this, he muttered. Levi didn't blink. I already regret enough. Murdoch spat into the snow, then turned, limped back down the trail, his shape shrinking between the pines until he disappeared. Levi closed the door. The silence in the cabin was thick and sharp. Wren whispered, "He's not going to stop." "No," Levi said, "but neither are we." He knelt then, not to lecture, not to comfort, but to meet the boy's eyes. "You stood your ground. That matters. That's yours now." Wren looked at him, really looked, and nodded. Levi didn't need to say more, because for the first time, Wren had spoken for himself, and that was a kind of freedom no man could take. For 2 days, Murdoch didn't return. The snow covered his boot prints like the land itself was trying to forget he'd come at all. But neither Levi nor Wren forgot, and neither did sleep come easy. Levi spent his time fixing the fence behind the barn, checking the traps, sharpening the blade on the old axe, things he used to do out of routine, now done with purpose. Wren kept close, quieter than usual, his eyes scanning the tree line like he was waiting for the woods to speak. On the 3rd day, Levi saddled Buck and said, "I need to ride into town." Wren stood by the porch, brows tightening. "Why?" Levi looked at the boy for a long time. "Because silence helps men like Murdoch keep doing what they do, and I've been silent too long." The boy didn't try to stop him. He just asked, "You'll come back?" Levi nodded once. "Count on it." Dry River hadn't changed. Saloon doors still swung with every lie told too loud. Horses still pawed at frozen troughs. But when Levi tied Buck outside the sheriff's office and stepped inside, he felt different, as if the weight on his shoulders had finally taken shape, and now he could name it. Sheriff Harlan was at his desk, boots on the edge, hat pulled low. He looked up as Levi entered. "Well, ain't you a stranger?" he said, sitting up. "What brings you off the ridge?" "I came to talk about a boy." Harlan's smile faded. "That's so. Name's Wren. Black hair, 10, maybe 11. Mute, mostly. Found him chained behind the saloon a month back." The sheriff scratched his beard. "You sayin' this now? After all this time?" "I wasn't sure it would matter," Levi replied. "But Murdoch came to my cabin, said the boy was his, wanted him back." "Murdoch?" Harlan's jaw tightened. "Yeah, heard the man dabbles in things that don't sit right." Levi crossed his arms. "He bought Wren from some trader down south. Kept him like livestock. I paid $1 to set him free." The sheriff stood, slow, walked to the window, looking out toward the saloon. "You got proof?" Levi's voice was quiet, but steady. "I've got scars on that boy's wrists. I've got the way he flinches when someone coughs too loud. I've got silence where there should have been a childhood." Harlan didn't speak for a long while. Finally he said, "You know how this works, Levi. No paper trail, no witnesses. That boy ain't legally yours." "I'm not asking to own him," Levi said. "I'm asking the law to do its damn job." Harlan turned, looked Levi straight in the eye. "You willing to stand in front of a judge, take him in, feed him, teach him, be his name on the record?" Levi didn't hesitate. "I already do." Harlan nodded slowly. "All right, I'll put in a report. It won't stop Murdoch from making trouble. But if he comes near that boy again, it's on record now." As Levi turned to leave, the sheriff added, "You know what you're stepping into." Levi paused at the door. "I'm stepping into something better than silence." When Levi rode back that evening, dusk had already painted the mountains purple. Smoke rose from the chimney. The rabbit hopped along the windowsill, and Wren was waiting on the porch, blanket around his shoulders, like he'd been watching that trail since morning. "Still here?" Levi called gently. Wren stepped down the porch and walked out into the snow. He didn't say a word, but he took took Levi's reins, led the horse to the barn, and brushed it down like he'd been doing it forever. Inside, after supper, Levi sat by the fire and handed Wren a folded paper. "What is it?" Wren asked. "Proof," Levi said, "that you're not his anymore." Wren held the paper like it might catch flame. His voice was low, but sure. "I didn't think anyone would ever stand up for me." Levi looked into the fire. "I didn't think I ever would again." But here they were, two broken things learning how to hold each other upright. The snow began to melt, not all at once, but in slow surrenders, dripping from the edge of the roof, softening the dirt path between cabin and barn. The pines shed their white coats like old regrets, and the river down below began to hum again, low and steady. It was a strange time between winter and spring, the kind where nothing blooms yet, but everything starts breathing. Wren had taken to reading aloud. Not perfectly, he stumbled over words, skipped some entirely, but Levi didn't correct him. He just listened. Some nights, the boy read beside the fire while the rabbit curled in his lap. Other nights, they sat in silence, the warmth between them louder than any page. Then came the morning. Wren found the tin box. It was tucked beneath the floorboard near the stove, the one that creaked when you stepped too hard. Levi had been chopping wood outside. Wren, curious, had pried it up, looking for a fallen nail. What he found instead was a rusted rectangle, sealed tight with a leather-strap dot. He opened it carefully. Inside were letters, brittle, faded, written in a looping, feminine hand. Beside them, a photograph, a young woman, hair tied back with a ribbon, a baby in her arms. Levi, years younger, eyes wide, not yet heavy. Wren froze. When Levi stepped inside and saw the open box, he stopped in his tracks. "I didn't mean to," Wren began, but Levi held up a hand. His face wasn't angry, just distant. He walked over, picked up the photo, sat down slow, like the weight of it hadn't lessened with time. "Her name was Leela," he said quietly. "She was stronger than I ever was, smiled at everyone, even when they didn't deserve it." He turned the photo over. On the back, written in fading ink, "For when you're lonely, love always, Lila and June." Wren's voice was soft. "Was June your daughter?" Levi nodded once. "She was 4 when we lost the wagon." Silence stretched between them. Wren sat across from him, holding one of the letters. "Why'd you keep them if they hurt to look at?" Levi gave a small smile. "Because pain's not the same as regret. Pain reminds you of what mattered." He paused. "I used to think that chapter of my life was the last one. Figured I'd just write out what was left of the book alone. Until..." He didn't finish, but he didn't have to. Wren understood. That night, they read one of the letters together. It was short. Just a few lines about how Lila missed him while he was off hunting winter elk. How June had learned to braid her doll's hair. How the house felt too quiet without him. At the bottom, one line stood alone. "Don't let the world harden what's soft in you." When Wren finished reading it out loud, he didn't look up right away. His voice had cracked halfway through, but he'd kept going. Levi wiped at his eyes without shame. "Do you think," Wren asked, "she would have liked me?" Levi nodded, firm. "She'd have taken one look at you and put soup on the stove. No questions asked." The rabbit thumped its foot by the hearth. And for the first time in that little cabin, Wren laughed. Not a smile, not a puff of breath, but a real, living laugh. And Levi, who had once buried everything he loved in the frozen ground, felt something inside him rise again, like a seed finally answering spring. It was a warm wind that brought her, the kind that carries the scent of thawed earth, and the hush of something new. Levi had been tending to the garden patch, just a few rows of onion and beans he kept half alive most seasons, when he heard the sound of hooves on packed mud. Not fast, not panicked, just steady, like someone who knew exactly where they were going. Wren stepped onto the porch, holding a folded blanket in his arms. Eyes narrowed toward the trail, and then she appeared, a woman in a long coat, riding a sorrel mare with legs like deer. Dust clung to her shoulders, but her posture was upright. A blue scarf covered her hair, and saddlebags bulged at her side. She slowed as she neared the fence and tipped her hat at Levi. "Mr. Levi Booker." Levi straightened. "That's me." She dismounted in one fluid motion, boots quiet against the soft ground. "My name's Miriam Lark. I'm from Westbridge. We got a small mission house up there. For orphans, mostly, wayward cases. The ones no one else'll take." Levi's eyes flicked toward Wren, who'd now stepped down the porch stairs. the rabbit trailing behind him like a shadow. Miriam continued, voice calm but certain. A few weeks ago, a trader passed through our town, had a boy with him, chained, wouldn't speak, ran off one morning and never came back. Levi's voice was even. He's here now. He goes by Wren. Miriam looked at the boy, her face softening. Well, Wren, we've been looking for you. Wren didn't move, just stood there, quiet as ever. Miriam crouched, taking something from her satchel, a leather pouch. She opened it and gently pulled out a folded paper. We found this in the trader's gear after he left in a hurry. Thought you should have it. She held it out. Wren took it slowly, unfolded the paper with careful fingers. His eyes scanned the page. A breath caught in his throat. Then barely a whisper he said, "It's from my sister." Levi's head lifted. Miriam nodded. She was sent east years ago. Wreckers said she died, but she didn't. She's in a small schoolhouse outside Franklin. We tracked the name. Wren stood still, hands trembling, the paper fluttering in the breeze. Levi stepped closer. You remember her? Wren nodded. She used to braid my hair, said I was her little Robin. The rabbit brushed against his ankle. Miriam straightened. If he wants, I can take him to her. It's a few days' ride. You're welcome to come. Levi looked down at Wren. This time, he didn't answer for him. He just asked, what do you want? Wren looked between them, between the man who'd protected him without asking for anything, and the path that might lead him back to blood he thought was lost forever. I want to see her, he said softly. But I want to come back. Levi smiled. You take all the time you need. That night, they packed supplies. Miriam stayed in the barn, warm under wool and saddle blankets. Levi helped Wren fold the letter and tuck it into his coat. Before bed, Wren placed the rabbit on Levi's lap. She doesn't like to travel, he said. She'd be waiting. Levi promised, and just before dawn, the boy who once slept in chains rode off on the back of a mare, scarf flapping behind him like a flag in the wind. Levi watched until they vanished into the trees. He didn't cry, but when the sun rose over the ridge, it caught something in his eyes that shimmered. Like the shine of something finally mended. Spring had come in full by the time Wren returned. The pines were dusted with new green. The river sang louder, and Levi's cabin smelled of fresh chopped dill and the wet earth of planting season. The rabbit, now fat and lazy, had taken to sleeping beneath the cot, twitching in dreams only rabbits know. Levi had almost stopped watching the trail every morning. Almost. But on the 14th day after the full moon, just as the sun cracked over the ridge, Buck raised his head in the paddock, and Levi saw two figures coming through the trees. The boy in front rode a little higher in the saddle now, sat straighter. His coat was newer, and around his neck fluttered a blue scarf, the same one Miriam had worn the day she took him. But it wasn't the scarf. Levi noticed first, it was the boots, too big by a size, clearly borrowed, but worn with pride, like a boy trying on the shape of the man he wanted to become. When they reached the gate, Wren dismounted on his own. The second rider, Miriam, gave Levi a nod, but held back. Wren stepped forward, no hesitation, no fear, just quiet certainty. I found her, he said. Levi nodded. I figured you might. She remembered everything. My middle name, how I like my bread. She taught at a school with wildflowers out front. Said if I wanted to stay, I could. Levi braced himself, smiled gently. And do you? Wren looked down at his boots, then back up. I told her I wanted to come home. Levi's throat caught. Wren reached into his coat and pulled out a small, worn envelope. He held it out. She wrote you this. Levi opened it slowly. Inside a short note and a photo. It was the girl, older now, holding a child on her hip. You gave him back his name. That means more than blood. Thank you, Ella. He stared at it for a long while, then folded it carefully and placed it in the same tin box where Lila's letters lived. They spent that night on the porch, watching stars bloom overhead. Wren spoke more now, told Levi about the teacher who gave him extra jam, about how his sister played the fiddle like it was part of her lungs, about the moment he realized he could finally sleep without hearing chains in his dreams. Before they turned in, Wren asked, You ever think about adopting a boy? Levi raised a brow. You got one in mind? Wren looked at him not as a child asking permission, but as someone offering a piece of truth. I already live here. Feels like that's halfway to belonging. Levi smiled. Well then, let's see about the other half. That summer, They built a second bedroom onto the cabin, planted more vegetables, hung a horseshoe over the door, upside down, to catch all the luck that might try to spill. And some nights, when the wind was soft and the stars came slow, Wren would read, aloud on the porch, his voice low and steady, and Levi, sitting beside him with a rabbit in his lap, would listen like he'd never heard a single word in his life. Before that moment, not every wound heals clean, but some do, and when they do, they leave behind not scars, but roots, the kind that hold when storms come. What was your favorite moment from Wren and Levi's journey, and what does home mean to you? Let me know in the comments, and if this story touched something in you, follow for more tales of love, healing, and the wild, beautiful West.